Hello, everyone. Welcome to week number 3. If you can believe it, we're getting into 2/3 of the class being done. I know this is a crazy time. I need to acknowledge that as the end of the year is here. Some of you are ending school this week, maybe have just ended school, or have a couple of weeks till school ends. So I do want to acknowledge that with you, but I want you to know that I'm here to support as well as try and make this manageable. So let's look at what week 3 is about. Week 3, we're going to look at understanding fiscal accountability measures. We're going to get a little bit deeper into understanding how to share the vision of a budget, have the dialogue with stakeholders, part of the requirement from the state and the federal government as well, and then being able to manage that and understand a little bit about where that funding is coming from based off of taxes, federal dollars, those components that fit into it. So that's what we're looking at this week. So to take that deep breath, let's get into the week. I want to start with that Christian message. Again, Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise have wealth and luxury, but the fools spend whatever they get." So that reminder here, we don't want to be a fool with our money as a future administrator. We want to be wise and have the luxury of funds to be able to support the programs that we want to see at our school. So with that, what are we going to read this week? So chapters 5 and 6 in the school finance text are going to ask you to I'm sorry, I have it up here, so I think maybe that'll be the best way. Chapter 5 looks at managing that budget. So you're going to look at calendars the state has to go through the process of a school budget that starts, again, with the state budget, really the governor, going back and forth with our state Congress or House of Representatives and senators who dialogue about that budget, going back and forth to get a budget approved. Then we're going to look at the district budget calendar that has to be met, about interim fiscal reports that have to be done, as well as for districts that aren't needing the funding or managing the funds very well, about how the state comes in, can offer loans to the district, or even come in to manage the district in those crisis times as well. So that is chapter 5. And then chapter 6, you're going to get into the district revenues. Like, where is that funding coming from? Is it a tax? Is it property tax? Is it looking at federal funds? Is it a base aid that comes from the community's local property tax and not the larger state issued funds that come in from, again, taxes, income taxes, property tax, and all these other components? Again, you're going to read more on it, but just knowing that there's these different sources of revenue. And then talking about LCFF and getting into that funding source. I'll be honest with you, chapter 6 and some of the reading that you've done will help you in assignment number 2. I know assignment number 1 is due this week, but just know chapter 6 will help you in assignment number 2. With that, you're also going to get into, when we talk about that tax revenue, you're going to see the video on the Prop 13 and how the legacy of Prop 13 is affecting school funding now. Again, that's why part of the comparison of us in California, when looking at what we budget for students compared to other states, is based off property tax. And what did Prop 13 do to California in funding schools? With that, you're also going to look at from the California State School Board Association, looking at a negative certification and a qualified certification of a district's budget, which happens in a process. You'll read a little bit more about that. You'll also be able to look over the Fiscal Crisis and Management Association's website. You can see what they have to say about different organizations and what they're doing and working on. And then another website is the certification of intern financial reports at the state level. Again, these certifications come in twice a year that a district has to do. It's not school-based, but the district is taking the funds they allocate to schools and manage to use for the entire district. They have to report an interim report, typically due in December and then also in March. So a first report and a second report showing how the district is managing their funds. And sometimes it's a forecasting out of not only this current year of funds, but 2 years forward. So that way you can get to a qualified or negative qualification for your district budget. You'll read more on it. but know that it is a process, very important process, because a negative qualification really stands out to say this district is not going to possibly make the ends meet in the 3-year cycle that they're looking at. So you never want that negative qualification. You would prefer a positive qualification. But again, we're in unique times that some districts who thought they would be negatively qualified with funding from the COVID relief funds, whether it's the state level or the federal level, have come in and helped districts to be able to say, hey, we can survive this year and maybe 2 years out, or only this year and still will have issues. So that is the reading components of week 3. So I just went through that list here. You will have a learning module. Again, the focus is on the district budgeting process. Part of that conversation that you'll read about, as well as when we get into more school budgeting, is the idea of centralized and decentralized budgeting. A school, when it's centralized, district is central in helping to make that budget. A decentralized is where the school starts at the 0 component and then builds their budget. So you'll get into these conversations or lead to these conversations. This week has, because of your assignment due, one discussion board, and that discussion board is in your reading about, in chapter 6, about the categorical funding that the federal government provides. You're going to give some clarification of what you understand about categorical funding and how that funding is issued out in your discussion board. As a reminder, discussion boards should be 250 words, citation added to them, referencing your primary source that you're taking your information from. It should also be grammatically correct, so please give a twice over into what you've typed up. I know sometimes I have those challenges myself. And then make sure you've posted by Thursday night and responses to 2 of your peers by Sunday night. And again, trying to put my thoughts into some of your posts as well, so definitely take a look at that if you're looking at responding to someone. Maybe process something else that somebody has said too. So the other big thing for this week, but we've been building up to it, so it shouldn't be a surprise, but this week assignment number 1, your current school site budget presentation is due. I'm going to click over to the descriptor for this. You are in essence giving an 8 to 10 slide presentation, whether it's Google Slides, PowerPoint, Prezi, however you decide to make this presentation. But you're presenting to a staff. Some of you we've had to talk about, it might be that you're presenting to a district level, a department, or maybe fellow principals about a budget, but you're presenting the budget information. You know, what is it that the budget for your site or the department you work in, who you've interviewed to have this conversation, talk about the challenges and the problems that you face in budgeting, and then how that budgeting is proceeding. What are you doing to make this budget work this current school year, or why it hasn't worked, and maybe some future changes in that dialogue. So very important that you put that 8 to 10 slides together. It is due again Sunday at 11:59. I just want to be clear in my grading. I really look at the rubric and try and say, you know what, is there no evidence, emerging evidence, developed evidence, or highly developed evidence? So again, general description of the budget, the school, and any stakeholders interviewed. That's a slide to 2 slides right there. Do you have the budget, the school, and the stakeholder discussed in a robust way, not just met with principal? You know, give a little bit more information or the background of the principal to give that robust manner, what the major funding sources are for your school budget, or maybe the one category you might have focused on if you're at the district level. So really go through the rubric and make sure that you're evaluating your presentation that you've built to it. Now, the presentation doesn't need to be formally recorded. You can add what would be presenter's notes to think of, hey, I think a little bit more information needs to see or understand. You can put that in your presenter notes, and when you submit, make sure that I can see those presenter notes as well. Or you're welcome to do a recording. Again, there's not a time limit to that recording. It's just the slides that I need to see and maybe your dialogue. So think that through in that process. So that's what this week looks like. Looking ahead, the reminder, next week will be do a compare and contrast of LCFF and basic aid. Again, you're going to be reading about that, have been reading about that, talking about the local control formula, funding formula. Sorry, that was hard to get out. Compared to that's a tax revenue, what the state generates, compared to a basic aid, which is where a district says, you know what, I'm not going to look at that funding formula, but we're going to take the basic aid level from our local constituents and their property tax or values that they contribute. So again, you'll see that dialogue. That paper is due next Sunday in week 4. And then I did assign groups. I've been able to look at group discussion blogs and see that a dialogue has started. I want to encourage you, feel comfortable to explore out in different areas, but there are a couple of groups that are saying they want to look at equity issues with LCFF. That is fine. You all are going to see it in different ways, different perspectives, so that conversation and your research is always going to be interesting as well. If you're thinking, hey, Will, I want to go outside of the box and those 4 things you listed aren't really something we want to discuss, I'm open for it. I'll check into your discussion boards, or you're welcome to email me and we can have that dialogue as well. I know that you will survive this week. I know God will give you strength. I know that you're here for a reason. We're in this class together for a reason, and it just happens to be at the end of the school year. But I'm just going to remember, find that calming point, find the joy in closing out the school year, even though it's been crazy and hectic. And I hope that you're also finding the joy of learning about budgets as you look at this as future administrators and thinking about what you're going to get to do with your budgets when you become an administrator. I'm here to support any way that I can. Don't hesitate to reach out through a text, a phone call, or an email, and I pray that God blesses you this week.